Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Code for Science and Society community call. We'll be live streaming today thanks to Air Mozilla and the Mozilla Fellowships team. Thank you so much, everyone, for helping out with that. If you're joining us on the Etherpad, I want to direct your attention to the upper right-hand corner. I see some unnamed pastel colors. You can add your name next to your little box, and you can change the color by clicking on the little box and selecting a new color. So please add your name, because then we can see who you are in the chat that's below it. And also sign in. We have a bunch of new people coming in, and it is really exciting to see you all there. And while you're doing that, you can also head on down to line 155, or it's probably lower than that now, and add community announcements and fun links. Those won't be read aloud, but it's a great place to share information and fun stuff. So without further ado, I want to jump right into our agenda. We have a bunch of awesome speakers today. On line 44, you can see our run of show, what's going to happen. We have two incoming Mozilla Fellows who are going to speak on the call. One of them is our very own Mozilla Fellow at Code for Science and Society, Darius Kazemi. So we'll introduce him. Will also be introducing pre-review and talking about the Open Source Alliance for Scholarship. Then we'll move into our speakers. We have Juan Pablo Alperin here from the Public Knowledge Project. Peter Van Hardenberg from Ink and Switch will talk about Pushpin. Alexander Koble and Knopfel will talk about Cabal, which is peer-to-peer chat. We have asynchronous updates on this call from Stencilla, because it's like 4 or 5 in the morning there, and Science Fair. And then Joe will talk about what's up with the Dap Project. And before we get going, I want to apologize for having the wrong time in the UK and beyond. I am sorry about that. But at least I said it was an hour earlier and not an hour later. So hopefully it wasn't too disruptive. And I'm not sure how that happened, but time is hard. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome Darius. Darius is a new Mozilla Fellow, Mozilla Web Fellow, and he'll be working with us at Code for Science and Society. And let's say hi to Darius, everybody.
Hi, folks. Thanks for giving me some time to talk to everybody today, Danielle. So yeah, I guess basics. I'm actually based in Portland, Oregon, which is where Danielle and Joe and are based out of. And I don't know. I'm really excited to get started on this fellowship. I had some. I guess I'll talk a little bit. I don't have any slides or anything, which I'm sure you're all devastated about. But my proposal to work with Code for Science and Society and on that was essentially around. I think the decentralized web is built on really cool technology. I think DAT is a really cool piece of tech. Cool tech always has unique affordances that are different from other pieces of tech. And right now, a lot of what I'm seeing happen in the decentralized space in general, not just in DAT, but on all sorts of platforms, is this mentality of, well, okay, we should clone existing services but decentralize them. And like that's cool, and I think even necessary. But I don't think most people are going to move from a centralized service to a decentralized service if the new service just does the same stuff more or less that the old service did. Unfortunately, most people don't really care about who has their data in what server and ownership and things like that. They simply don't, which makes me sad. But hey, what can you do? So, I've been doing a lot of work around Mastodon and ActivityPub recently, especially in the last year and a half. And being a part of that community and working on that project, it's clear that people move to something like an open ActivityPub-based social network because it has possibilities for things that something like Twitter does not. And most of those possibilities in that case involve stuff like moderation and that kind of thing. And then I look at a project like Beaker Browser in the sort of DAT universe, and like that's a really interesting project to me because it's like, oh, well, here's this thing, and it does this thing. It's a web browser, but it does this thing that other web browsers don't, which lets you publish information, and you have basically free web hosting. Chrome does not come with free web hosting. Firefox doesn't come with free web hosting. So my plan for the next 10 months is to immerse myself in the technical side of DAT to start with, and just get really into the nitty gritty of how it works on all layers. I also want to immerse myself in a bunch of the surrounding projects and become familiar with them and become familiar with their communities. And then what I want to do is create pieces of software that function as rhetorical arguments made in code. I really want to build stuff that when people look at them, when people play with them, they go, oh my God, this decentralized web is so much cooler and more interesting than the centralized web. Like, I want to get over here and do stuff on there. As an example, one thing that I did was I forked Mastodon, which is an open source, decentralized social network microblogging service, kind of like Twitter. And it's standards based. And I created a fork called Dolphin Town. The link is in the Etherpad, dolphin.town. And it's a social network where you can only use the letter E. And so people just go E, E, E at each other. And you can't make that happen with like a centralized service, but with an open source decentralized service, you can do that sort of thing. And it's like not a useful piece of software, but it does function really nicely in terms of showing people like you can take things to an absurd limit with these, and like build social spaces that you simply could not build in other with other technological configurations. So, you know, my hope is that I spend my time creating unique things using DAT. I want to generally make a less homogeneous web. I want to see lots of weird little things flower and flourish. And my hope is that will encourage both implementers and programmers to come over and go, I want to play with this some more, and also users as well. So.
Awesome. So does anyone have any questions for Darius? You can put your questions right there in the Etherpad under the line 75. Seems sane compared to what we have now. We have a couple of chats coming in.
All right, I see a question. Yeah. What am I building first? Okay. I don't know. The first step is really research and immersion, and then we'll see what happens from there.
Yay! And to be fair, Darius just had his like first onboarding call 1 day ago, I think. So, so no pressure, but we're all really excited. That's awesome. All right. Well, if there aren't any more questions for Darius, we're going to move on. But I want to, give him a warm welcome from the Code for Science and Society community and the broader DAT community. And now I'd like to make another exciting introduction and announcement. Daniela, are you on the call? I believe she
Miraculously, I am.
Yes.
So so there's a weird.
Okay, fantastic. So as we've talked about before, Code for Science and Society, we try to incubate and sponsor projects in public interest technology. And we're always really excited when we could start working with a new project. And so this is pre-review, and I would like to announce that we are officially fiscally sponsoring the pre-review project. Yay! Welcome pre-review. And we're going to give them a little space to talk about themselves, introduce themselves, and they'll be hanging around the community. And also, Daniela is a new incoming Mozilla Fellow in the same cohort as Darius, focusing on science and academic stuff. But I'll let you all introduce yourselves. Take it away.
Yeah, thank you so much. It's really a miracle that I'm here because I hit a 2-hour delay on the highway from Croatia to Italy, but never underestimate your time when you're in Italy. Apparently, I forgot about that. So this is great. I'm so excited. We're so excited. Sam is here in the call as well, and Monica. The three of us are working on pre-review. And what pre-review is really right now it's a platform online that allows you academics and researchers to collaboratively write reviews to preprints. What we're trying to do now is also to grow pre-review as a community. So for those of you who are not in academia, basically what happens is that when you're we do a bunch of research on the bench, and when we want to share it with the community, the traditional way to do so is to write up in a manuscript and then submit it to a journal for publication. It turns out that this process from submission to publication takes an average 9 months up to a year, if you're lucky. And the fact it's so slow is because this science needs to be reviewed. And the reviewers are researchers. They're very busy. And it's a small pool of researchers that journal editors have access to. And so there are several problems with peer review. The fact is slow is one of them. But what has been recently kind of a solution to this problem has been something called preprints. And so as a researcher now, we're able to just put our manuscript online in servers, in preprint servers, and there are many available. And so as both Sam and I, when we met a year ago, we were very we were going around and promoting preprints as ambassadors for Sabio, which is a nonprofit organization that kind of spearhead this process in the life science. And one thing we thought we could do, and it was a very small project, born as a Mozilla Working Open Workshop project, we thought we could start to bring curriculum and resources for researchers to discuss these preprints at Journal Club. And Journal Clubs are just meeting, kind of like this call right now, but they usually happen in an academic environment, not online. And it's just when researchers discuss already published science, and a lot of critiques and positive and negative sometimes come out during this discussion. And we thought that this would be a very good structure to actually host discussions around a not yet published science, so that we can give that feedback to the authors before it's too late, because there is still time at the time of preprints to actually incorporate that feedback and make it better. And also that would have been a way in our mind to promote the use of preprints, because it turns out that biologists are a little bit slow at accepting this as a valuable way of disseminating science. And we can talk about for just probably a couple of hours just that if you have questions we can answer. But basically I want to get to what preprint or pre-review is. So basically what we initially thought we just have a bunch of resources, and then we go hosted by Autoria to move those resources from a bunch of Google Docs that we had at the beginning to an actual platform where people could post those reviews and get a DOI, so a digital object identifier that would allow those reviews to be citable, and therefore make those reviewers also able to kind of be recognized for their efforts. Because it turns out that when we peer review as researchers, we're actually not rewarded for doing that. Everything happens in closed doors. And then you can imagine that there are all the issues that come with that kind of opacity in peer review. So our dream is to engage a community of researchers that is as diverse and inclusive possible in terms of both career level, but also in terms of like a population that contributes to review, because many studies have shown that this pool of reviewers is usually, as you can probably easily imagine, very restricted to a kind of a more senior positions and Americas and Europe. So we want to use preprints and the tools we're building at pre-review to train early career researchers, and so young researchers like myself and Sam, in how to provide this constructive feedback and then share it in a way that is that will allow these researchers to be recognized. And so we are now very excited to be mentored and fiscally sponsored by CSS, I'm sorry, not to CSF is the cerebral science fluid. And we are building, in the process of developing and designing a building, Pre-Review 2.0, which is going to be an open source platform based. It's going to have a little bit of that and science fair modules. And we're doing that in collaboration with Rick Smith-Une, which I don't know if he's in the call. If you're there, that's great. And so, yeah, and then we are going to build a curriculum and a program to mentor these early career researchers. So
that's so awesome, Daniela. Yeah. We're at about 5 minutes, so I want to flag and just see if anyone on the call has any questions or comments for Daniela. also thanks to, so Daniela, now you can keep talking. Sorry, I just want to flag 5 minutes.
No, it's totally great. I have written, Sam and I wrote more than we could say. So if there are any things you can, keep reading if you're interested, or
awesome. Yeah, so there's a couple people in the chat commenting. It's a cool project. I think it's a really exciting opportunity for us at Code for Science and Society to work with a project that has a software, like an exciting software component, but also is really built around the community. The object of the game here is to open up the peer review process and change the culture of academia. And so we're super excited about that. Sounds great. And so I don't see any questions coming in right now, but if there are some questions, feel free. Also, I just want to comment, if anyone's thinking about what Darius was saying, a couple of questions have come up for him on line 78, and he's been answering those up there. And, oh, there is a question. Here we go. How are you promoting pre-review? Can I selfishly get you to come to my campus and talk to the researcher community?
Yeah. So this is actually the most exciting part, and it's of like what we're moving towards this next year, because so far everything has been done as the side project of 3 very busy women, and so late nights and stuff like that. So what I'm excited about getting the support of Mozilla to actually work on this full time, and then continue to get Sam and Monica. So the idea is to go around and actually do talks at society meetings, as well as calls like this. And we are on Twitter, and in less than a year, we got like 1,000 followers, which is kind of good for, a very small side project. And then please, you all go out, follow us on Twitter, and help us on the mission. Yeah, writing
awesome.
blogs.
Yeah. All right. Thank you so much, Daniela. And now I want to keep the call moving, but feel free to have your questions and comments go to Daniela and Sam below line 136. And now I'd like to introduce Jonathan Cain, who is the Data Services Librarian at the University of Oregon Libraries, and so much more. He joined us in New York in the month of late July. Sorry, I want to say a month ago, but somehow it's September, where we brought together a bunch of people who are working to build open tools for research and scholarship. And it's called the Open Source Alliance for Open Scholarship, and Code for Science and Society has been involved with this group for about a year. And so we wanted to bring together people to talk about some of the issues in the ecosystem that are affecting people, and how can we provide better resources for folks who want to build great tools. So Jonathan, I'll let you take it away from there. We have a couple of notes on line 179 and below.
All right, can everyone hear me okay?
Yes, you sound great.
All right, thank you. And thank you for having me. You took away my first 30 seconds with the background information. Now I got to stretch.
Sorry.
No, I was really, really honored to be invited to participate in this project, because I thought it was a really interesting way of approaching, as a relative outsider, some of the issues that I think that I'm beginning to see inside open research and the open research community. So effectively, I feel like 20 to 30 relatively diverse people were brought together into a room to create a product, which effectively was a handbook to address sort of the issues that are affecting people who are beginning open projects, sustaining open projects, and try to provide sort of a roadmap for these people or these groups to follow to get started. And I thought it was a really novel approach, because yes, there's a wide variety of resources that are available to sort of guide people as they exist, as they operate now, but it's very much an in the know community, and I think the more phone calls I go to, the more groups that I go to, I realize it's an in the know community, and I start to, I'm very new to this community, and I'm already starting to see several of the same names and faces show up over again and again, which is not a bad thing. I get to make new friends. But I think one of the great things that came out of this discussion, and I think it was a really well facilitated discussion in the project, was a real thorough interrogation of the fact that it is a community that is relatively small and focused. The facilitators did a really great job of setting up a framework for people to discuss through their personal experiences, telling personal stories, their backgrounds, and their expertise areas. And that framework actually really allowed people to not only have their unique researcher hat, but their human hat, and combine those sort of things for the overall product. I think, sorry, that's a little rambling. But one of the remarkable outcomes for the project, for me, from my perspective, was the dialogue on critical issues in which participants were engaged. I think early on in the project, we recognized there was no shortage of guides for people to get started. And what really came out was a discussion about how do we make something that is accessible and extensible as possible? How we make something that is engageable to communities who may feel left out of this process. And so that acknowledgement of the closed shop atmosphere I think, sort of changed the perspective. And we had a group in the room that decided it was really important to privilege voices that may be from minority communities, and so therefore don't naturally bubble to the top, and it's sort of a closed shop atmosphere. And ultimately engage in some really, I don't know, I think very challenging and rewarding discussions at the end, which I think may actually contribute even more than the resources that were gathered and the initial advisement that was offered. So I would say over the course of the 3 days, a lot of content was produced. Topics on operations and technology, people and mission, some of the things that I have no experience with. I learned a lot from a lot of different people. I think a pretty solid plan was established about what the product of that hackathon was going to be and how it was going to be distributed, and how earlier I said something that was flexible and extensible and would allow other people to contribute to it. So it wouldn't be a firm living, it would be a living document. It wouldn't be a firm locked document, recognizing that the community is going to change all the time. The participants in that community are going to change over time. And one of the things we wanted to say was we wanted to open up this voice of authority to it, to a wider community, then having the document being open and able to be amended as people come into these different communities was an important part of what we were striving to do. Again, let me congratulate the facilitators who did a really good job of navigating what I think were probably some what became challenging issues and challenging personalities in the room. Anytime you start to talk about closed communities, or you talk about practices of power, things are going to get thorny. And I thought they did a really great job of, one, encouraging those conversations, motivating those conversations, and making sure those conversations were not a separate part from building a resource on open research, but were integral to that actual document.
Thank you, Jonathan. That's really nice to hear. I was one of the facilitators, so I really appreciate it. I do have to cut you off because we're at time. I'm sorry.
No, it's fine, because I ramble.
A couple of questions. You don't ramble. You just talk and you sound good. There's a couple of questions coming in, and I'm going to ask you to just comment on them in the pad, because I want to keep the call moving on to the next presenter. But questions about the DAT community, and I know we've talked about that, so it would be great to hear your perspective and maybe have Joe chime in on that answer too. And Nate, so there's another initiative that really dovetails really nicely with Open Source Alliance, which is called JROST, and Nate is talking about that a little bit on line 203, and I believe I also have it in the community announcements section, so feel free to jump in on that. So without further ado, I would love to move us on past the fun links, but keep putting your fun links in there because fun links are always really fun, including if you're going to MozFest, link out to your proposal, line 256 and below, and we can sort of +1 it or go to the GitHub and make comments on it. I know a couple of people on the call will be going. And so I'd love to bring on Alexander and Knopfel to talk about Cabal on line 285. Ooh, that's a long pad. Cabal's an experimental peer-to-peer offline first chat platform, and it works. I've used it multiple times. It's super fun. So go for it, y'all.
All right. So like the way we've kind of designed this is like I'll just do some talking for 5 minutes, and then we can take questions. So yeah. Cabal is a decentralized chat platform built on top of Dap's foundational technologies. It's like IRC, except you have backscroll when you join, if you've used that. Or it's like Slack, but instead of the data living on a company's servers, it lives on the computers of everyone participating. And like to understand a little bit better, like Knopfler actually coined this great phrase, which is that your friends are the data center, which I think is this like really good metaphor for understanding it. And to like kind of touch on what Darius said was that, yeah, it's not only like Slack, but decentralized, like it also adds things. So you can use Cabal while you're offline because you have all of the data on your computer. So that means you can both read and send chat messages like whenever. So if you're on a bus or like on top of a mountain, you can sit there, chill, and write messages. And then the next time you get internet, you'll sync with the other people who are online at the time, and you'll exchange messages. And that'll work like if you're on the internet or if you're on the same local Wi-Fi network. So another thing that's cool with Cabal is that we have this like wonderful like network of people who've just like kind of found the project and started making pull requests, and it's amazing. So as a result, we have 3 clients. One's a desktop client made in Electron, which I'm going to demonstrate. We have a terminal client, which I'm also going to try to show, and we also have a mobile client for Android, written in React Native. And all of these are like exist thanks to just like people being like, oh yeah, I'll do this thing, which is like astounding. Another cool thing is that you have unlimited chat history without needing to pay anything. So that's a cool thing. And like the last thing that I think is cool to bring up is that we have like no idea at all of how many Cabals are in existence, which is super cool because you just download a client, you create a Cabal, you get this Cabal key, which is like a DAT key. It's 64 characters, a hex string, with Cabal : / prefixed. You send it to a friend, and now you have a Cabal, and like it's just between you two. So before the demo, I just figured we'd kind of like sum up our goals and kind of state the current status of the project. And as for our goals, like basically we want to make something as long-lived as IRC and as useful and accessible as Slack, while keeping like all the freedoms of peer-to-peer software, which lives on people's devices, which is that once you've downloaded it, then you can just use it and hack on it, and we can't really do anything. Since there are no servers, it's just between you and your friends, you and your community, like it's, yeah, just have fun with it. So basically, yes, to create a easy-to-use, hackable chat platform for friends and communities. And as for where we are right now, we just finished rewriting the database from using HyperDB, which is a distributed key value store written by Macintosh, to instead using a collection of hypercores through, like, we're using modules written by Knopfler called Capricorn Multifeed. We can post some links later. And we just updated the terminal and desktop client to use this new database. And so we made our like first alpha release, which is super exciting, and you can find it on GitHub. So yeah, I'm gonna try to demo the stuff now. We'll see how it works. I'm gonna start Electron here. We'll see if it's visible. Yeah, I think it's visible. Yeah.
Looks
Cool.
good.
So yeah, so you can write, of course. Hey, and Knopfler's there. We have Markdown rendering. And you can share the Cabal key. I'll post it in the chat like that. We have different like channels, like beep and boop. We can see the peers here, and the green ones are the ones that are online right now, and the gray ones are ones that we've seen. We also have like different cabals, support for different cabals in the desktop client, which is nice. And let's see if I can start the terminal to see that it's actually working across different clients. No, that's the wrong one for sure. No, it's not. Cool. Yeah, so this is the terminal, and it looks kind of like IRC. I love IRC, but Cabal is pretty cool. So yeah, so this is Cabal. It works. You can download it now. You can use it with your friends. You can just create a chat room to like, it's like Messenger, but you own it, and you can have different kind of channels for different kinds of feelings or projects and whatever. And it's cool to see people joining. But yeah, that's like what I figured I'd say. So if there are any questions, we can take them.
Yeah, this is really cool. I was trying to join and do this at the same time, which I'm not going to do. So I was curious about if you're thinking about any privacy and security issues with this. I know that we've had different conversations in the broader DAP community about DAP privacy, and so I'm wondering how that plays out in this project.
Yeah, Notto, are you still there? If you want to field that question.
I'm still here. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yep.
Cool. So with the new Kappa core changes, there's not encryption happening, and we're like very upfront that like there's only like partial privacy, but we're moving toward a model where we're going to encrypt every message with the shared Cabal key, or with a separate key. Sorry, so that will let you do things like have like blind peers, which will replicate your Cabal but can't read the data. That'd be a great way to, like, we could host servers that just replicate Cabals for free and then can't read what you're saying. So it's a great way to kind of get more uptime on Cabals without having to like sacrifice the readability of your data.
Cool. So any other questions? Okay, someone's asking, one of the great things about Slack is that there are integrations for other services like Docs and Dropbox. Have you thought about other services that you'd like to integrate with that currently exist, or do you see Cabal as its own Cabal?
Yeah. So like, well, like Cabal is basically just like this database, and you can use the API to do kind of whatever you want to. Jim Pick had this cool demo where he basically made a bot that took DAT links, and you could register new bots using this super cool like subset of JavaScript called SES or something. So basically, you could like write your own integrations, host them on that, send them to this bot, and then they would like it would run the JavaScript on them and maybe just do whatever the code says. So yeah, I mean, we kind of want to leave it up to people to do whatever they want, and it's open enough that they can.
Awesome. That's so exciting. So are there any more questions coming in? Suddenly on my computer, I have a window frozen thing. There it is. Okay. Any more questions coming in on the pad? Not right now. So if you have questions, a lot of people in the chat are saying, wow, that's awesome and cool. So that's really fun. And I can't wait to see what happens with this project. And we'll move on to our next speaker, Juan Pablo Alperin on line 399. Juan Pablo, are you there?
I am.
You are. Excellent.
Yes, you can hear me.
Okay,
and now you should be able to see a little presentation.
Juan Pablo's using slides. What?
Yeah, I know.
Right.
I mean, only because I want to show a map, our map of world domination.
No, I think it's good. It's good. It's good. We love your maps.
I will. I want to, well, first introduce myself. So I'm Juan Pablo Alperin. I'm an assistant professor at the publishing program at Simon Fraser University. I also need to put up the slide so that I can put all three of my main affiliations. I also been working with the Public Knowledge Project for over 10 years now. And so I wanted to, and that's a little bit what I'm going to talk about. I'm also the co-director of the Scholarly Communications Lab, a research group doing work around different areas of scholarly communications. And just before I get started, a little plug that we've launched a visiting scholar program for the Scholarly Communications Lab. So if any of you out there, researchers interested in the area of scholarly communication, just go to scholcom.ca and check out that. It's a very simple sort of application process to try to see if you would like to come to Vancouver or to Ottawa, where the other co-director, Stephanie Haustein, is based. But I do want to talk a little bit about the Public Knowledge Project. We have, for those that don't know, so what is PKP? PKP is a project based out of several universities, primarily Simon Fraser University, where I am, and Simon Fraser University Library, that has as a general mission to increase the quantity and the quality of knowledge that's available to the public. And very importantly, and something that I like to make sure I always emphasize, is that it also has a mission to increase the quality and the quantity of the global participation in knowledge production, meaning that who gets to participate, what are the ways in which to participate, and lower those barriers to participation so that more people get to participate, or anyone that's interested in the voices of different communities can be part of the general and sort of a global conversation around scholarship. We are, like I said, just a project based out of a university, but we've been around for 20 years. And so although we don't have we're not a formal organization in that sense, we really just, people distributed around the world, and some people working here in the Vancouver Library, some people working in from areas like from Brazil, from Germany. We've got sort of a small team, but globally distributed. And one of the main things that people know us for is OJS, Open Journal Systems, which is an open source software platform based using very simple technologies, using LAMP. So it's a PHP based application. Like I said, it's been around now for the software itself has been around for over 15 years in different incarnations, and the software is used by journals around the world. Most people just kind of think of PKP as open journal systems. This is the sort of our biggest claim to fame, the thing that has sort of given us the most sort of recognition and people's awareness of us as a project. And this is the main reason I had slides, is just so I can show this colorful map of showing where there are journals around the world that are using our software. So as you can see, it's software that's really used on a global scale, over 10,000 journals. How we arrive at this map and identify these installations is a whole messy thing. So it's just kind of like an estimate of the installations that are out there and the journals that are actively publishing with our platform. But it brings me to something that I wanted to also share with people. I think it's something that a lot of people are not super aware of it. One is that the kind of journals are able to use our software, and this is why I think in that sense very much aligned with our mission, is that the majority of the journals using our software are being run either by scholars themselves or by universities that are sort of hosting installations of the software. And so in that sense, and I don't know how many of you are attuned to some of the conversations around in the scholarly communication space, a lot of anxieties and concern about the acquisitions of different journal publishing, well, and just in general scholarly infrastructure projects around. I mean, the most recent one is the Authorea acquisition by Wiley, but we've seen the one thing that kicked off a lot of conversation was the BE Press acquisition, which is they were doing software and repository software used by many libraries, and they've been acquired. And so a lot of the global conversation around the need for scholarly owned and scholarly operated infrastructure that to make sure that we're managing our knowledge commons by the scholarly community ourselves. This is exactly the kind of community that PKP has now for going on 20 years been supporting. So when you're looking at these 10,000 journals, they tend to be journals that are sometimes on a smaller scale, but very often the vast majority of them are being run by scholars or by academic institutions themselves. This is the community we pride ourselves on serving, and the community that I think our software is best suited for. Although, of course, the software itself can be used for anything else. This is as being open source software. People would just take it, install it, and do whatever they want with it. Although 98% of the journals that do make their journals open access and make all of their content publicly available, but there's nothing in the software that precludes people from running any kind of journal or any kind of business on top. But I think sort of the last thing I sort of wanted to say before I show you a couple of little screenshots of what ODS looks like is that PKP, although we are mostly known for OJS, we're an organization that does a whole bunch of other things in the space, in the scholarly communication space, to try to fulfill our mission. We work, we do other softwares. We do software around for managing conferences. We do a software for managing monographs, academic monographs. We've been working on a stack to be able to do conversions of documents from Word to XML. But we're also very active in the community. We're active in the community through research activities, and that's where the Scholarcom Lab, for example, comes in. We do research on different areas of scholarly communications, and I've listed just a few of them there. We're also just very active in doing advocacy around open access and around like being a voice for small scholar-led publishing from other parts of the world. We're trying to shape the conversation, right, to make sure that this global context is being taken into account. We have an education program to try to train editors, and we organize events like PKP sprints and the PKP conferences to try to bring the community together. And lastly, we provide services. So one of the ways we sustain ourselves as an organization is to provide hosting services for people that want to run our software, as well as a handful of other services.
Awesome. Hey, Juan, I want to flag
yeah.
that you're almost at 7 minutes.
Okay,
So
this is it. I just wanted to show you some pictures of some pretty OJS installations, and then that's it. So we can start receiving questions while I just flip through these, and you can see how beautiful the latest version of OJS looks.
So there are a couple of questions here. One is, what's the mechanism used to evaluate quality of knowledge? Is there a peer review process? And so I think this person is probably thinking about, like, you know, knowledge more broadly, but Juan,
right, so I'll say, so
yeah.
PKP is, so we are not arbiters of what is quality. What we try to do is make software that helps to structure the way that scholarly journals work and operate. So we try to provide within the platform all kinds of mechanisms for people to be able to sort of have the right kind of communication, for the contents to be properly indexed, and for them to be able to offload the managing of the journal to the software, so they can concentrate as the editors and as the scholars themselves on the quality of the work. So that's the way in which our software helps to fulfill our mission. It's not us deciding, oh, this is good and this is bad.
Cool. And so I had a question about competing with for-profit journals. For those of you who aren't in the academic and like research space, there are like big conglomerates that make giant profits off of selling the work that researchers do back to researchers and to the public. And so that's something that, you know, the open access movement has been fighting against for a long time. But I'm sure there are a lot of issues with competing. And so I'm going to let you answer that question in the pad and move on to our next speaker just for time. But I think you're doing really important work there. And thank you, Juan, for joining us on the call.
No, thank you for having me. Yep, thank you very much.
Awesome. All right. Next, we have Pushpin. So for those of you who were at our very first community call, you saw some other magic from Ink and Switch Labs. Pushpin is really cool, and I'm excited to see the demo. Juan, we might need you to stop screen sharing to get Peter to start screen sharing, I think.
Done.
Is that true?
Hey, everybody.
So, yeah, take it away, Peter.
Yeah, hi, my name's Peter. I work with a small private research lab called Ink and Switch. We have a bunch of kind of diverse research interests, but mostly we're interested in how computers can be used to help people think instead of consume, and to create instead of just sort of constantly being distracted. That interest really led me into this sort of part of the world, because one of the sort of key problems with sort of the present day computing paradigm is that, you know, all of your data is controlled by these platforms where you might not have access to it when you need it, and where your data might evaporate in a puff of acquisition at a moment's notice. And there's a bunch of other reasons why having your data on your computers is really valuable, including just like it's fast. But I want to talk a little bit about a recent project we did, and I'll kind of give a quick tour of it here. This is Pushpin. It's sort of a, you know, it's like a personal knowledge archive. Here is an example board I made.
I'm going to interrupt and say, can we make it bigger?
Oh, I don't know if I can make it bigger.
It's okay. It's okay if we can't. We can get the overview, but if we can make it bigger, that would be cool.
You maybe just make it full screen because we're seeing 3 screens right now.
Oh no, he has a big screen.
Just have a big monitor. How's that? Is that better?
I think it looks good. Yes.
All right. So
that's better.
Here's a little
Totally better.
example board where, just to sort of show what we're doing, these are some neighborhoods. A friend of mine was thinking about moving in San Francisco, and so we were talking about different neighborhoods he might be interested in living in, might move to Berkeley. Here's another example one. There's a brief history of Earth. I like to use this tool for taking notes during conference talks and things like that. So here's a little history of the Earth. All of the pictures and links and everything that I've put in here are stored in the app and offline. What's neat about all of this is that everything you see is a document that is itself described by a link. And so we could look at what one of those links looks like. It looks a lot like a DAT link, but it includes a description of what the data type is. So from any of these links, if we go into any of these documents here, like this image, the image as well as a link that I could load or share independently. So everything you see is a document, and all of the documents are just React components. And so what's cool about this is we've basically built a little platform that we're using to compose this sort of like corkboard experience. But for example, here's a little chat window, which I'll make full screen. And now we have sort of a mini Cabal clone here. Hello, CSNS. And then I have my...
We hear you. Yeah, sorry.
And then here on the other machine, I can say... And all of these are just little documents, again, that have their own links. So I could like share this link with anyone else running the app, and they could open it up and see it. So this is open source. It's BSD licensed. You can play with it. I wanted to show just an example of how this is implemented. That might be a little bit ridiculously big now. I will shrink it a little bit.
I mean, we can read it, so that's good.
Enter. So what's cool about this is that what we have is literally just a React component that you can load in our system. And at the bottom of this class, it's a single file with CSS and everything self-contained. You could take this code, hack it, and add a new one. And in order to implement a chat system, because we're doing all of sort of the deep distributed systems magic below the waterline for you, if you want to build an app using this technology we're working on, you can do something as simple as just defining an object that has an array, and then you can give the URL for this object to somebody else, and they can render that same object online, offline, much like Cabal works. And then to make a chat app, all you have to do as an application developer is not do all the interesting and cool work that Alexander and Stephen have been doing, but you can just write a render function, and then when somebody pushes enter, you can push a new element into the array. This is the whole code for building a chat app. So you have a handle to your document, you push the message in, and then you're off to the races. And so it's been really fun watching other people taking this code and playing with it and taking it in new directions. If you're interested in looking at this more and playing with it, we have Pushpin up on GitHub. I still owe the community a blog post about all this, but there is in the docs folder here. Wrong one. There's a hacking document that sort of explains what Pushpin is, how you can play with it, how you can for yourself, sort of what it all does and how it works. And yeah, that's our most recent project. I think
awesome.
Have I been quick enough?
Yeah, that was awesome. You did it in 4 minutes and 57 seconds, which is amazing.
Right on schedule.
Right on schedule. If you can add some links into the Etherpad so that folks can go check out those docs, and we'd love to publicize that blog post when you write it.
I have it. I just need to publish. It's terrible, I know.
Perfect. There is a question in the Etherpad. Are all those documents that have links individually licensed? I'm not actually sure what that means.
So the way the system works is that sort of when you saw the board is actually just an array of links to other sub documents. So each of those documents has an X and a Y and a width and a height, and then a like its own descriptor which you could share with someone. The documents, there's no opinion in the app about the documents. We don't license your documents. The code for the project is BSD licensed. But the documents themselves would be, I suppose, unlicensed. It would be your copyright. Simply sharing a link doesn't transfer any license to anybody else by doing so.
Okay, that sounds cool. No, and don't, the person is apologizing for it not making sense.
Oh, that's
I
fine.
may not have understood something. So
Any
no
lessons learned
worries.
from implementing identities? Oh man, I would love to spend lots more time on this question. One of the interesting things about our system here is that you might have noticed, here, I'm just going to share my screen again for a brief moment. So in Pushpin here, you can see that there are these little avatars, each which have their own icon, and I have the same avatar up here. And so if I come back here, you can see here's my laptop where I have the app running as well. I have live presence there. The little ring came around it so I can see that I'm online. And so in our system, your identity is itself another document, just like a text card or an image or anything else that you share with other people, but that other people, well, right now shouldn't edit, but in a future version can't edit. And the idea is that that identity then can be used for sharing documents. So for example, my other profile, I've shared myself a little board here that I could now open. Maybe I can open it. Software. Maybe the image will load. That would be cool if it did. Maybe it won't. But the idea is that, yeah, your identity is a document. So we think that you can define an identity with a document and then use keys to cross-sign all the contributors to that document. One of the great things about DAT is that it's built around hypercores, which are single author append-only logs. And so what we've done is used a CRDT called AutoMerge to bring together all of those append-only logs into a single view that is coherent no matter where you bring it in from. And can post a link to AutoMerge into the repo as well.
Cool. Well, I'm going to stop you because we've only got a few more minutes left on the call.
By all means.
Stencilla and Science Fair are doing asynchronous updates, so you can read a little bit about what they're up to on line 433 and 462. And now I'd like to turn it over to Joe Hand, who's going to give the Dap Project update. And that'll be the end of the call.
Cool.
Take it away, Joe.
So the most exciting thing is that we've now can announce that we've received a Mozilla open source support grant to work on sort of community building and documentation. So some of that documentation will be around the implementation of different languages. So Yashua has been working on a Rust implementation, and we're sort of excited to get other implementations going. And so part of that funding will go towards making sure that people can sort of implement the protocol at all the different levels. And then other parts of the documentation will sort of be what Darius was talking about, making sure that DAT is very accessible to different types of communities, and sort of evaluating our current documentation and what's missing. But also we're really interested in general is like what other communities have been successful at creating sort of a long running process for having up-to-date documentation and making sure that those are readable by different communities. So we're really interested in sort of looking at the bigger view while also updating our own documentation. So that's exciting, and we'll be starting to work on that. And if you're interested in helping us do that, we'll be hiring contractors for that. And if you have experience doing documentation, feel free to get in touch. The other very exciting thing is the multi-writer. So this is sort of a long time coming, but it's also a long process. Jim Pick has recently sort of done the first full prototype of that. So you can see that in the link I've thrown in the Etherpad, and I think we'll try and get that published on NPM soon, so you can sort of see what it's like to have a multi-author DAT and sort of have that available with NPM. And let's see, I threw a lot of other random links. We were at the Decentralized Web Summit at the end of July, and that was lots of fun. We have some of our links, and we had a community demo session where Peter and Nafal and John Kyle and the Beaker Browser team and others presented. So you can sort of see all those presentations. Carissa had a great talk on the Web of Commons that you can see about sort of why we should be concerned about our current approach to data and ownership and how we can sort of think about that differently. Then we also received a great cryptocurrency donation from the puzzle prize winner, so that was great. And then the last sort of thing that I want to plug is that beginning with this Moss grant, we're really going to be try and be more transparent about all the funding that goes into DAT. So this, we've been grant funded to date, and we've sort of been trying to be somewhat transparent about that. And you can sort of see all our grant funding history in some blog posts, but I want to try and keep that more up to date. So I created a GitHub organization. I'll be starting to update that with all of our grants, so you can see the actual applications, some of the sort of statements of work and other sort of pieces that are more organizational. So you might not be interested if you're just interested in that, but if you're trying to run your own organization, we hope that those type of things will be really helpful. So I'll start to update that with our sort of full transparent financial information. So that might be exciting or might be really boring. And I think that's all I have. Yeah, that's it.
I have a question, Joe. If I wanted to contact you about being a contractor and working on DAT in exchange for money and not just the friendly vibes, what's the best way to do that?
Yeah, so you can email me, joe@dapproject.org, and I published the milestones, and I don't remember if I included the timelines on when we're trying to do those things, but I can make sure to update that GitHub repo with more specific timelines about when we're trying to do each of the Moss related things. Oh, and I should mention that the Moss project was initiated by someone at the Common Voice project at Mozilla. So Common Voice is a way to get a lot of voice recordings for machine learning, and it looks like a cool project, but they're trying to distribute a lot of voice data, a lot of audio data. So they're interested in how to use DAT for that. So you basically have to have a champion inside Mozilla, and they were the champion for us. So that's pretty cool too.
Yeah, we really appreciate that, and we're happy to help anyone else who's interested in looking at that grant, or really any of the grants that we've gotten, understand more about how that system works. And that really ties back into what Jonathan was talking about with the Open Source Alliance for Open Scholarship. We're interested generally in just increasing transparency around the whole open source public interest technology ecosystem. So whatever we can do, reach out. And with that, we're at 9:58. This call is going to be over in 2 minutes. Thank you so much to all of our speakers for joining us. We really appreciate you. And thank you so much to the amazing 24 people who have joined us here. This call will be on YouTube pretty quickly, so please share it and anyone can watch it. The last call got watched like 200 times, which is awesome. And I'll turn your attention to line 236. We've got community announcements, the joint roadmap for open science tools. That was mentioned a little bit. It's a really awesome organization that we're participating in. Web Recorder will be on our next call, and they're working with DAT for sharing web archives. It's really interesting stuff. Beaker Browser just had a new pre-release, and there's a multi-writer DAT command line preview, and a whole bunch of conferences. So if you're looking for opportunities to connect with the community in real life, check out the conferences and stuff where we'll be and add where you'll be, and we can all get coffee in foreign cities together. Yes, my cat is on the call. This is Boyfriend. He's a brown tabby, and he probably wants food. He's very aggressive about that. Any other comments from our speakers before we sign off?
Bye all. Thanks for having me.
Oh,
yeah, thanks
thank
for
you so
keeping us
much.
all on schedule and bringing us
hey,
all together.
that's what I do. That's why they keep me around.
If you're interested in joining the next call, you can follow us on Twitter, and there's an email list, and I'll make sure to get that link. I don't know, somewhere in the Etherpad.
Oh, the email list is here.
Lines, but we'll make sure it's clear.
The email list is on line 232. Do you like email? Join our email list, and you can click on that link, but we'll share it out on other platforms too. And if you join the email list, then you get alerts about a week ahead of time or a month ahead of time about the call. So thank you, everybody, and that's a wrap.
Perfect. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
All right. Thanks, Con. We're all done here.